Good morning. Welcome to Finding the Silver Lining, Managing College Admission Stress During COVID-19. This is part of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce's 2020 Let's Talk Education series. We wish to acknowledge immediately the support of Santa Clara University, University of California, Santa Cruz, Enlighteens Education, Insight Education, Cupertino Union School District, Cupertino Library, and the Cupertino Library Foundation. My name is Henry Sang Jr. I am today's moderator and the president of the Cupertino Library Foundation and the chairperson for the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce's Education Committee. I also wish to acknowledge the exemplary work of Meilin Obinata from Enlighteens Education. Meilin is the project manager for today's series, and she did almost all the legwork for putting this together. For those of you who are new to our series, the Chamber of Commerce invited a number of us together 5 years ago to discuss what we felt were some shortcomings in how our community was looking at education and how it relates to the world, to the working world. In our community, the primary emphasis generally is towards getting into college, which is a challenging thing, even in ordinary times. We felt that it is important for parents and students to look up, though, and investigate what might make better choices for people as an individual in terms of education. For example, college might not actually be the right answer, but definitely towards careers after college, because college itself isn't the end goal. We typically host a series of in-person events, but you know what COVID-19 did. We did have covered everything from things like college selection, what would be your dream college, to stress management for teens, because that's a perennial problem going back to caveman days. Panels of graduates, people who graduated 10, 12 years ago from our high schools, they're now in the working world. So what worked for them, what didn't? Or panels of employers. What are they looking for from college graduates? And so how should you be thinking about not only getting into college, but getting through college? So we had a whole series of events that, now we're virtual for. This year, of course, has been a year like no other. College selection, admissions, and even attendance are greatly impacted and changed. We're hearing great doubt and uncertainty and the accompanying stress that always comes with that. So we decided to put on today's event. What we have is a very solid panel. We have things representing universities. We have Maura Bonini from Santa Clara University, an admissions officer there, as well as Judy Nguyen from UC Santa Cruz. We have two professional counselors from our local companies. There's Meilin Obinata from Enlighteens Education and Purvi Modi from Insight Education. As an important part of the panel, we also have parents of seniors. So they're going through the college admissions things right now themselves. There's Daric Jackson. Daric is a parent of a high school senior, a girl, I believe, at Cupertino, and is the principal at Regnard Elementary School. So this guy is now seeing it from both sides, And we have Roslyn Donald. Roslyn is the parent of her son, who is a high school senior, and she is also the supervising librarian for adult and teen services at the Cupertino Library. So she has been dealing with college admissions questions for a long time as well. This event is meant for you to be a good time for you to ask questions. So let me cover some operational logistics. Everyone on the panel is presently muted. I'm sorry, the audience is muted. And should we decide to give you permission to speak, you'll still need to hit the unmute button to talk. I doubt if we'll be doing much of that. The panelists will be primarily talking. There is a very important button at the bottom of your screen. It might be hidden, so you might have to mouse down. And you will see it says Q&A. Q&A is where you should be posting questions. And we really encourage you to post a lot of questions. That's the whole thing. The chat button is where you should let us know if you're having a problem. Some people will put things in the chat button, but we really like to see things in the Q&A because we can keep track of that. And the hand button, you'll see a hand button on the screens for the attendees. And that's if you need to raise your hand for something. But in general, if you have questions, you should hit the Q&A, put things there. Okay, well, with that, I'd like to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Judy from UC Santa Cruz.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Judy Nguyen. I am a senior evaluator at UC Santa Cruz Office of Admissions. I've been there for about 7 years now, and 8 years now. And I primarily deal with a lot of records and transfer credits and applications, but it's really nice for me to be able to go out and talk to people. So this is a really pleasant change for me to be able to like come out and answer questions. Yeah.
I'm muted. Maura, could we have you introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maura Bonini. My pronouns are she, her, and I work at Santa Clara University as one of the assistant directors of undergraduate admission. Cupertino is part of my territory. I have quite a few, yes, love Cupertino. I have quite a few different cities in the South Bay. So I'm happy to connect you. If I'm not your personal territory representative for Santa Clara, happy to connect you with them, but I'm so excited to chat with y'all today. I am an alumna of Santa Clara. I graduated in 2016, so be aware, I am a little biased, but I absolutely love Santa Clara, and I'm super excited to chat with y'all today about some of the opportunities on campus and after graduation. So thank you.
Very good. Meilin.
Hi, I'm Melanie Gominata from Enlighteens Education. Let me just, I'm going to share my screen. So we are a group of idealistic educators. I believe the average level of experience is 8 or 9 years. Here's a handy screen with all our faces. Yeah, so I've been doing college consulting for, I don't know, 9 or 10 years and primarily focused in the South Bay. Personally, I like to help students find what sparks their joy. So that's me.
Very good, Meilin. Once again, thank you, Meilin, for putting this program together. Now, next is Purvi Modi. Purvi is also usually one of our speakers on the Dream College panel as well. But Purvi, I see that you're still muted.
Thank you. I have to get used to that. Hi, everybody. My name is Purvi Modi. I'm one of the owners of Inside Education. We've been in the Cupertino community since 1999. I myself am an undergraduate. I went to undergraduate at UCLA and then a graduate degree at Stanford School of Education and then business school also at Stanford. Our counseling team has more than 80 years of college counseling experience. And what really makes us special and what we really love doing is working with teenagers going through this admissions process. But our philosophy is really applying to college, preparing for life. It's not just about college as the end goal. It's really thinking that it's one step in your life and really helping kids to develop the skills to be successful throughout their life. So throughout high school, getting into college, once you're there, and also long term. So really excited to be here and to talk to everybody and to hopefully bring some peace in what are really crazy times.
Thank you very much. Next, Rosalyn.
Hi, I'm Roslyn Donald, and my day job is as supervising librarian for adult and teen services at Cupertino Library. So if you've ever been on the second floor, you've seen me or my staff, and helping you find books, supporting your education, occasionally handing out boxes of Kleenex when kids and teenagers and adults cannot agree. I have done it more than once when there's been a big fight over what you're going to read. So we're a full service institution. But in my other life, I am a mom, and my son Andrew is a senior at Design Tech High School, and he wants to do a music degree. He plays the trombone. And so our applications path is more fraught than other people. I said, you realize you have picked like the hardest thing to do, right, honey? Oh yeah, Mama, it's cool. Great. So since I'm a librarian, I use the New York Public Library as my backdrop. And the two lions behind me are named Patience and Fortitude, which is what all parents need, especially now.
Yeah, we have, by the way, I believe Roslyn was on the original group that put this series together 5 years ago, right? So I'd forgotten about that.
Yep.
And by the way, and you know, by the way, I want to mention, since I'm with the Library Foundation, the Cupertino Library does have a variety of services that they're offering, both for checking out books and for returning them. And, you know, we're looking forward to how to have a return to something of normal library things. But I also wish to point out that about a third of the staff is still working as emergency disaster workers for the county. So our librarians are helping in a lot of ways. Now, last but not least is Daric Jackson, who I also understand is a musician and who's going to start to be our band. Daric, you're muted, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Anyway,
see, there you go. We're going to have a theme song.
Right. So my name is Daric Jackson. And as Henry said, I'm the proud principal of Regnar Elementary School. This is my 25th year in education. It's important for me to point out that I have been a high school principal for 15 years. Even though I have that experience, I am experiencing something completely new this year with really trying to navigate my daughter, who is a senior, to decide what she's going to do next. So as a parent, which is really my number one job, right, comes before anything, just trying to figure out how to find balance with her and her friends, and myself as a parent and my wife, because we're trying to balance this whole thing as well. So hopefully I can add to the conversation today.
And before all of this began, the college admission things for Daric, he had a full head of hair. And so you can see what stress does for you. I also want to mention that we have Anjali Kalsar, who is the executive director. I think you're also CEO now of the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce, who is running the back room for us all. And I want to thank Anjali once again as the founder for this whole series. Now, Anjali, I believe we have a poll that we're going to run for people right now.
Yes, Henry, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to start the poll, and I would like to ask all the attendees to please respond. We'll have the poll open for 30 seconds or so. So please take a moment to respond to the questions. They're just 3 simple questions. This will help the panelists kind of gear their responses and stuff to you. Another second and we'll be closing the poll. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to first have the 2 college admissions officers give you kind of a 5-minute overview of what they're seeing, both at their schools, but at other places, right? Because it's a very rapidly evolving situation. And we know that not only is it involving one institution, it's involving at all 2,500 or so of the major institutions in the United States at this time. So with that, we're going to have Judy Nguyen from UC Santa Cruz go ahead and give her introduction on to what she's seeing.
Hi. So I do notice that, a lot of students and parents are unsure of what the next year brings for them. And that's totally reasonable because we've never seen anything like this before. And we have the big word of the year is pivot. So we've been doing a lot of pivoting. And it's funny because the Friends meme is being emailed around everywhere. So, but definitely everybody has been working together on our campus, and I know the other UC campuses as well. As things change daily, we try to accommodate our students first. Our students, our staff, our faculty, our parents, the people are important. And so that's what our administration is trying to think of first whenever something changes. And I think that the communication has been a lot better because we're not seeing each other every day. There's been a lot of emails being sent out from our chancellor, just updating the general public about what's going on. And I'm actually really proud at the amount of communication that is going out from our campuses to try and just, I don't know, settle people's fears about the unknown for the next year. And we're here to answer questions too. So even though we're not physically in the office, everybody is working remotely on our campuses, and you're welcome to email us. Some of us may not have phones, but definitely email us with any questions that, you know, are concerning you about the next year, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Great. I'll make sure I'm not muted. Okay, great. I'd like to now ask Maura to give us a little information on what she's seeing and how they're doing things at Santa Clara.
Yeah, great question. I want to start by saying that this is one of those times in our history as a world where we're really all going through a similar experience, right? Obviously, all different communities and different folks are experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic in different ways. But that being said, we understand as admissions counselors that there are certain things that are totally out of your control right now. And we don't expect you to have the answers to those questions. So I think what I'm noticing with students and parents is, you know, they're asking questions like, oh, are you going to know my school did this? Or are you going to know? And the answer is yes. We are working with your high schools to know exactly how they dealt with grades in the spring, how they're dealing with grades in the fall. So really, don't let those things that are out of your control stress you out, because we're all in the same boat. I'm in the same boat as you too, right? This is a whole new experience for me. So I'm going to be understanding of when things come up. You know, I'm not looking at the application, right? Like for extracurriculars, for example. Obviously, we're going to be looking at extracurriculars a little differently. We don't expect you or want you to have gone to soccer practice every day in the spring, right? So that is something I really want to highlight. And the other thing I want to highlight specifically with Santa Clara, and I know the UCs have moved away from it, and I'm seeing a lot of schools do this as well, is letting go of those tests, the ACT, the SAT, and those entry exams into college. Now, my kind of philosophy is, first of all, make sure when you're applying to schools, really delve into whatever school you're looking at and what their policy is. And I can talk more in depthly about Santa Clara's policy specifically. But in terms of the testing, when a school says test optional, they usually mean truly that, test optional. So don't feel pressured to take the test if you don't want to. So those are really the big things that I'm noticing. I'm happy to delve into more as we move on through the panel. But thank you, Henry.
Oh, that's very good. So, you know, one of the things that we know is that the counselors get these questions day in and day out. And so I was actually like to see if Meilin, would you like to, you know, on some of the things you just heard, this is meant to be a conversation. So are there any particular things you heard from Judy and Maura that you'd like to, you know, bring up because representing your point of view or what you're seeing from parents?
Well, I wanted to piggyback what Maura was mentioning about test scores, and there was a question in the Q&A. So people are thinking, okay, well, if I can't, you know, if I have a great test score or if nobody cares, then what should I do? So I guess that's something that if Judy or Maura want to provide more context, they're welcome to. But I think that there's different factions, right? So some people, they haven't taken a test, or it might be really hard for them to take a test. I've heard stories about students, you know, they're trying to schedule times and then they get canceled and they're kind of worried, like, okay, I'm going to put in all this effort to try to get this thing. And I think that there's a context, right? So that's the hill, that's not the hill to die on. Clearly this year, that's not the hill to die on. But I think a lot of people feel like, okay, but it seems like a concrete thing. And so anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Every case, of course, is different, but I think that there may be better things to spend time on than preparing for an exam that may or may not be that important in this admission cycle. But anyway, I'd love to hear from Judy and Maura and anyone else too.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I do have some thoughts on that. It's been an ongoing discussion, and I don't know why it slipped my mind, but every time I do a visitor presentation, that's probably the biggest question I get is about test scores. And it's truly optional for the next 2 years, actually. So juniors and seniors, tests are going to be optional for the UC application, and it's under discussions about what's going to happen after that. But I personally believe it's going to go away. And when we say optional, it's not, you don't read in between the lines, because I tell people it's optional, but is it really? Does it give me a leg up if I have the scores? No, it's completely optional. It does not hurt or benefit you if you have test scores present on your application. Actually, it's still a current discussion right now with the UC system about a test optional being on the application. Most of the UCs will not even be considering the ACT or SAT. So if you put it on there, it's kind of a moot point. We're just gonna glance over it. It's not gonna add or take away anything. UC Santa Cruz will not be using it at all. Some of the UCs may only be using it to validate maybe an A through G subject that the student might be missing from their coursework. For example, if you score high enough on the math portion of your test, it validates like certain level of math that you've taken in high school. So that may be the only reason for taking the test, but other than that, it's truly optional. You do not have to take it.
Judy, can I actually ask you a question about that? Because we know already that Berkeley, Irvine, and Santa Cruz are definitely going to be test blind for this year. And
Yes.
The current lawsuit has made it such that all of the UCs will be test blind for this year, which we know that judgment could change at any moment.
Yeah.
But just to clarify for families, this refers only to the SAT and ACT. This does not refer to subject tests and AP exams. So if you are applying for majors that are very competitive, engineering, bio, psychology even, and if you have testing to show, that could actually be valuable. And again, like Judy's saying, like validate, things that you have done. But Judy, quick question about that. So knowing that you guys are going to be test blind, if kids put it on their application, will it get stripped out of the application, meaning admissions officers won't even have access to it, or will it still be visible?
I believe it will still be visible just because that would be a lot of work on the application developer side, and I think there's only one guy doing it. He's great, but he's overwhelmed. So I think that we will be seeing it, but we go through a really rigorous training every year just to refresh us on how to read. And when I say rigorous, it's like, it's crazy. So we retrain ourselves every year, and by the end of that week, we're really good about what we should be looking at and what we should be ignoring.
Maura, do you want to also weigh in on that?
Yeah, definitely. We're in kind of the same boat as the UCs. Test optional means truly test optional. I always tell students, if you don't have to wake up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to take a test, don't do it. And I think that we're kind of in the same boat as UC Santa Cruz as well. It's 2 years for now, but I'm pretty confident that our office is going to move forward from there with a test optional or test blind policy. The way I like to kind of, and one of my colleagues mentioned this, and I think it's a great way to think about it. I like to look at the SAT scores now, kind of like your resume, right? You can submit a resume on your application totally, and it gives us more information and context about what you've been doing, but your resume is not going to make or break your admission decision by any means. So if you took the test scores and you're really proud of them, go ahead and send them in. I'll see them and I'll say, great, that's awesome. They did really well. But then if you don't take them and you don't send them in, I'm not going to say, where are the test scores, right? I'm just going to look at other parts of the application. Santa Clara looks at applications holistically. So because of that, we really do have the opportunity to completely ignore that test score in the admission process, right? We're going to be looking at all the things you've been involved with in high school. We're going to be looking at extracurriculars, ways you've contributed to your local and family communities. That's a really important thing for Santa Clara, is the commitment to service and your family communities. So there are a lot of other ways that we can see your preparedness for college on the application. I will say, in terms of those SAT2s, AP scores, we do not require those, but feel free to send them in. Again, they'll just add more context to the application. But what really we're going to be focusing most on is the rigor of the courses that you've taken, right? And that's kind of what's going to be the main focus of what ends up replacing the SAT and the evaluation process. Cupertino students, in general, from my experience, rigor is not something I'm necessarily worried about with y'all. You take lots of really challenging courses. If anything, I would tell you to drop a class and sleep a little bit more. Truly, when I look at APs, I would much rather see you take a group of APs of classes that you're interested in. If you want to do history in college, you do not need to take all 3 AP physics. If you really like AP physics, go ahead and do that. But I really want you to come into college mentally full and ready. So, don't let the idea of, oh, well, since I'm not taking the SAT, I have to take a million AP courses. That's not what we mean by any means. We just want to see that you're challenging yourself within the high school, environment. So I know that was a lot of different pieces. So sorry about that, but that's kind of how we're looking at the testing moving forward. Yeah, and I'm happy.
This is interesting because both of you have said you're predicting that actually standardized testing, at least in terms of the SATs and ACTs, is basically going to go away from your institution. But I heard, I think from Judy, that maybe in the subject test, it may stay around. Is that right?
It's still optional. It's always been optional.
Okay.
AP and subject tests have never been required. We have only used it for validating missing subjects. AP tests give you college credit, and it's nice to have, but it's not going to hurt you if you don't have them on your application. As Maura said, it's just additional context.
Okay. Well, I go out to the panel again. So, including the parents, what other things are, you've heard them talk about this. What questions do you have, or do you think that your peers who are other parents worrying about seniors are also need to think about?
Well, actually, as I was listening, I just reflected back to my time as a high school principal when I had some outstanding students that did not do well on tests, right, on standardized tests. But when they went to college after 2 years after high school, they excelled. So this actually may be an opportunity for those students who fall in between the cracks, so to speak, right, to have an opportunity to go to college and excel. Because not for all students are the standardized tests, SAT, SAT, really evaluate who they are as a person. So, I'm excited to hear that that right now, at least for this time being, that those tests are not being counted. And I know that my daughter and some of her friends are relieved as well, right? So I know there was supposed to have been an exam last weekend. I mean, it's good to sleep in. I don't know about you, but my daughter liked to sleep to 12, 1 o'clock. So it would have been a challenge just to get her up at 7 anyway. So, I mean, I'm excited to hear about what's happening during this pandemic. So for those parents who are like me, to have the kids in between, this actually is a good opportunity.
This seems like it has, you know, a lot of impact, especially for not for necessarily as much for seniors this year, but when you look at freshmen through juniors, I mean, this is really going to change up stuff. And you know, I have two daughters, one who is great at testing and one who is terrible. So, you know, I can understand how this can either be a frustration or a relief. But you know, I'm sure the ball just, you know, it's like a balloon. You squeeze this part, but something else must you know happen. So I'm hearing from Maura that maybe you don't, you know, sit there and just take AP test galore, but what about things like extracurricular or other involvements? What are y'all seeing there? What are y'all looking for? And maybe maybe that part hasn't even changed. Judy, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I can answer that from the UC perspective. So like Santa Clara University, we do a holistic review process. And we publish, there's 14 criteria that we look at. And one of those criteria was tests. So technically it's 13 now, but there's several different criteria we look at, not just tests. So it should not be something that students and parents are stressing on and focusing on this year. Extracurriculars, we do understand it is difficult this year, but extracurriculars aren't, I always tell students, aren't necessarily like school sponsored or organizational sponsored activities. It's however you spend your time and your passion. So I'm pretty sure most students don't, you know, turn off their computer after class and then just veg out for the entire day. You gotta, you know, stimulate your mind somehow. You're doing something. So write about whatever it is you're doing and how it makes you feel and how it improves you as a person, even if it's just playing video games. Yeah. So I'm hoping that helps a little bit.
Okay, good. Maura, you're shaking your head on that one. Is that
Yes.
the same way you guys look at it?
Exactly. Yes. We are really, you know, students are contributing to their communities in so many different ways. I know I get a lot of students from Cupertino High working at the Cupertino Library. That's an awesome extracurricular. But then there are some students who, are more interested in something a little bit more private. They like to do art in their, they have an art portfolio. So, or there are students who are, you know, 3-sport athletes, right? There's so many different type of student. Oh, Daric, we are on the same wavelength. Yes, athletes are a great opportunity as well, but there's a lot of opportunities for students to really explore their ideas of what they want to do in high school to help them move forward with their kind of college application process. Now, one thing I will say, and this is kind of a joke, one mom did ask me once if her son could talk about binging The Office one weekend. And I said, you know what? I'd rather read an essay about maybe the Office binging experience rather than looking at that as an extracurricular activity. I'm just teasing, but most things, you know, you're bringing so much to the table. So talk about that. And we look at activities and the context of your environment and your school. And, you know, it's not the type of thing where, oh, this person didn't do tennis and water polo, I guess they're not going to get in, right? It's really a quality over quantity thing. It's your individual experience, and that's what you bring to the table. And again, I mentioned it earlier, we know that practices and rehearsals aren't happening in the normal capacity right now, so don't feel stressed out about that. We get it.
If I could just add to that, the kind of contrasting this to testing. So in Cupertino, for a lot of families, testing is a predictable thing. It's something they feel like their children can control, and it's something that they've been thinking about for so many years. And so now for it to just kind of be gone feels very unnerving for a lot of families, especially for kids who might have done well on testing and not as well in other areas of their overall application. So I think this is why we hear so many questions about it. But to kind of transition to the extracurricular piece that you're talking about, Maura, and Judy as well, is that where we are right now is very different than where we were in March and April. In March and April, everything just shut down, right? So kids couldn't go to sports, the clubs were done, they were home, like they literally didn't know what to do with themselves. But now things are, when I say opening back up, I don't mean that you can go you know, on the athletic field and play with like 30 other people, but you can probably in a small stable cohort, like start doing practice. You can probably do online choir practice with your group. You can think about clubs that are now happening through Zoom, or work on robotics in your own garage. So things are very, very different from an extracurricular perspective. And what I've really loved seeing is that kids are now feeling less pressure of feeling, what the word that we use is hyper optimized, where parents are feeling like, okay, you have 5 minutes here, go do something, or you don't have anything on Tuesday at lunch, go join a club. But rather it's like, well, what do you want to do in that free time? So kids are gardening with their parents, which I think has been wonderful. They've been pursuing things, hobbies they haven't had a chance to do before, but they really wanted to. So one of the things we tell our kids is like, what do you want to do in your free time? And for a minute, they honestly are like glassy eyed and like, nobody's asked them this question since they were like 5 or 6 or 10 years old. And so like, I have choice. So it's been really great to see the interesting things that kids are coming up with on their own, but also extracurriculars are definitely opening back up. And so many schools just had their club day or their club fair in the last week, the high schools, the local high schools. And so kids can go and start to get involved. And especially if you have younger kids, like don't feel like they can't do anything. They can go join all these clubs, and even your seniors might have new opportunities to do things that they didn't get a chance to do before. And admissions officers are gonna, I won't speak for you guys, but I think they're gonna love that because it just tells them, who are you gonna be on my campus when you get here?
You know, I have to break in on this one, Purvi, because if your husband, Ajit, was online, the first thing he would be saying is, go get a job, right? And he would tell stories about working at McDonald's.
Some kids
right?
are getting jobs though.
Yeah, but you know, by the way, you know, speaking towards careers, as a former director at HB Labs, one of the things that I would always ask the students, like, well, what jobs have you done? Because I'm actually hiring an employee, not a student. So, but I just had to bring it in because he's not here and he's been the guy pushing that Bible pretty hard. So, Daric or Rosalyn, what can I hear from you guys on this?
Well, I was just thinking that while, you know, all parents have to have the video game discussion with their children, some more than others. I have to admit, I have given in on it a little bit, because there wasn't much else to do, and you know, but also video games can be a really great social experience for a lot of kids. And so one of Andrew's essays for his answers to his UC questions is about leadership. And he talks about his PlanetSide group and how they all have to communicate, and they have to, you know, he has to be a leader when they're doing, you know, virtual hot drops into the combat zone. So, you know, thoughts about first person shooters aside, he's like, it's not really that gory, Mom. Like, great, that's so reassuring. But still, he has a whole gang of people online that he works with and communicates with and is part of a team with, and they have regular gaming dates twice a week. And sometimes I'm like, can you do this? He's like, no, Mom, I have important video gaming to do.
Can I break in on that too when you're done?
Okay.
All right.
And so, you know, so, I mean, these are valid social experiences, and he's taking it and turning it into part of his answer about how have you shown leadership. And I think that's totally valid. So I do insist that he, you know, get away from the screen at least once a day. And he's also been assigned, he cooks dinner twice a week, which means that my kitchen is destroyed twice a week. But he hasn't actually burnt anything down yet. So yeah, I'm like, be a member of the household. How have you contributed to the household today? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, good, take out the trash.
Leadership at home. Sorry.
Yeah,
Say that.
Yes. I have to say, with video gaming, I've been seeing more insight questions being answered with video gaming and experiences. And, you know, as much as sometimes people laugh about it, it does teach you valuable skills. It teaches you how to think strategically and leadership. Yes, because more of these games are you have to organize a team and work together towards a single goal. Yeah, and that is a really valuable skill, especially when you get to college and you do all these group projects and your grade depends on it. It's amazing. And if your student can articulate those skills from their experiences from video gaming or what have you, whatever they're spending their time on and their hobbies, if they can articulate how it's made them a better person and given them valuable life skills, that's what matters. And that's what we want to see.
You know, I would like to add, you know, I know we're talking a lot about students, but I'd like to take a moment to talk about parents, because parents have to find balance right now during this time as well. So when Rosalyn said that she had to give up on some, well, not really give up, but compromise.
Back off.
Right. So I had to do that as well, right? You know, I would like to say use this as an opportunity, though. So now that I'm no longer in high school, I'm at the elementary school. One of the things I talk about with my parents is that the years go by so fast during elementary and middle school. You're blinking, your kid will be in high school, and then when you blink again, they'll be in college. This is an opportunity during this pandemic for parents really to reconnect with their students, not just about academics, but who they are as a person, because kids make changes from elementary to middle to high school, right? So this is an opportunity to engage with your kids on a different level, find out who they are again, and at the same time, you finding out who you are again, because you learn some things about yourself. When everyone is in the house 24 hours a day is different, right? So really take advantage of this opportunity, because in the next couple of years, your kids will be gone. They will be adults out on their own, and you can't get these moments back. So I just wanted to toss that out there. Use this as an opportunity to reconnect on a deeper level.
You know, the one thing I wanted to riff off of a couple of things I've heard. I heard, you know, this is the time for people to really exercise options. And I think one of the things we've seen a lot is people tend to feel like they're railroaded. You know, they're just following the plan that the high schools and their peers have set out for them. So it's a good chance. I also heard Rosalyn talk about having her son cook, and Daric on connecting. You know, that's life skills and how you teach your kids to do things, and talking about, you know, actually my grandmother taught me to do this, or, you know, I used to have to shovel rock in our driveway, so doing the sweeping the floor ain't that hard, you know. But, you know, you go out there and do things. Show your kids how to do stuff. Learn how to do things together. I mean, you know, Daric's right. I mean, this is a very valuable time. And by the way, once they go to college, you do want them to eventually learn how to cook, clean their own room, do their laundry, all of these things. Purvi, I interrupted you though.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is a very special time. But I know it's a horrible time in many ways, but it's a very special time to just be able to spend time with your kids, not just driving in the car, running around. And honestly, a lot of my families of kids who are now current freshmen in college, but back in March and April when they were seniors, the parents were kind of excited about, like, my senior has to spend time with me. They can't go and hang out with their, I mean, you know, the kids were really bummed, but the parents were so excited about getting these months with their kids that they normally wouldn't have gotten. Now it's probably gone on a little bit too long for everybody, but it was just really a special time that they, you know, there was no stress of college admissions, like grades were pretty well set at that point. So it was just bonus time with their kids before they actually, you know, headed out into the world.
Yeah. You know, I'm looking at, we have a lot of questions. I was asking if Anjali, if there's a particular one she's been monitoring us that maybe we should throw out to the panel right now.
Well, a lot of them are related to SATs and subject SATs, and as to what, you know, even though we are saying subject SATs have always been optional, like they're not offered anyway, the AP exams, those are all things that people are still talking about. And then a couple of questions are related to what can we talk about in an essay question. Is COVID, SIP, SIP, essay a diet topic, you know? But I think some of these things you did cover in different ways. But if you want to talk a little bit about more about the essay piece of it and give some suggestions on, because what I've heard from other counselors and people is that COVID is probably should not be the topic of your essay. So it would be nice to hear from all of you as to what you think about that.
Yeah, I would love to start. So a lot of schools, I don't know specifically about the UC's application, but I know specifically on the Common App, there is an additional question that specifically asks about your experience with COVID-19. So feel free to use that space to talk about whatever you want. That being said, do not feel pressured to talk about COVID-19 if you don't really have anything else to say other than, oh, I've been quarantined in my room, right? That's not necessarily what that box is for. It's more for folks who've had a direct experience with that, okay? So, and the other thing about COVID, and really the main reason why I would encourage you not to write your entire personal statement about COVID is, again, this isn't an individually you experience, right? And the great thing about the personal statement is it's really your opportunity to talk about you, brag, and talk about all the things that you love and are passionate about, right? Now, in terms of the essay, I always tell students, have fun and don't let it stress you out too much. My favorite essays are the ones where I read something that I didn't necessarily get to read somewhere else on the application. So I remember I read an essay, I think it was from a South Bay student, I don't remember where, and it was a brilliantly written essay, but it was about boogers, and I hated it. I was like, this is the grossest essay I've ever read. But I was like, this essay is incredible. I was like, I feel like I know this student. I understand their sense of humor. I really feel like I understand what this student is trying to say. The essay wasn't entirely about boogers, but I just remember there being a specific line that threw me for a loop. So, but I remembered that. Right? So have fun with it. Don't feel like you have to say anything that, and this is another big one, is I really advise students to avoid what I call the trauma dump. If you've experienced something in your life that you want to share with us and you've really learned from that experience, please feel free to share that. But never feel like you have to come out or share any sort of trauma in your essay if you don't want to. It's not going to be an automatic in, right? I think a lot of students think, oh, I have to share a traumatizing experience in order to get into college. That is not the case. If it isn't healthy for you to explain what happened, don't do it, right? Really have fun with your essay, write about something fun that you didn't write somewhere else on the application, and explore and, have a good time with it. I know no one has a good time writing their college essay, but I always like to think that you do. And I really enjoy reading the essays. So anyways, I'll pass it on to Judy, but that's what I would say specifically about the COVID-19 section.
Yeah, the UC system, I actually did a personal insight question presentation at for one of the college conferences, but yes, we don't really want you to write about the COVID situation unless it was something that really, really impacted you in a powerful way. Otherwise, we don't want to read hundreds, thousands of personal insight questions about, I stayed home, I learned how to sew, and I was getting driven crazy by my family and siblings and whatever. So
I can tell you what, go ahead. I'm sorry, I jumped in on you.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, I can tell you what Andrew is doing with one of his essays is he is mentioning COVID, but it's really the pivot point. So he was supposed to do this music training with his band, and then they couldn't, and they were going to go to Washington, D.C. and do all this cool stuff, and none of that happened this summer, but because of COVID. And so they took that and they turned it into an online training, and they all learned how to use this digital audio workstation package called Soundtrap, and they made music videos with playing their music. So COVID was the reason that they had to pivot, but I said make most of it about how you made marmalade out of the lemons. And so so use it like that, but don't talk about your COVID experience, because frankly you are warm, you are dry, you have plenty of food and lots of internet, so don't cry.
If there was a COVID experience, like one of my parents had to be hospitalized, and I had to step up and become a pseudo parent or something like that, it would seem like that's a big deal.
Yes.
Or we had to deal with grandma and the things, and my parent were upset, and here's what I did to try to keep mom or dad calm. That works, right?
Yes.
Just has to be meaningful types of things.
Exactly. As long as it's meaningful and genuine, those are the ones that stick out. For personal insight questions, the way they differ, we used to have the personal essays, but now we have the questions. And the reason why I keep saying they're personal insight questions is it is not a writing exercise. It's very short and concise. You get 350 words. There are 8 questions, and the student gets to choose which 4 they want to answer. And, you know, before anybody asks, they're not weighed more heavily than others. And yeah, as Maura said, that there's always those students that feel like, oh, I have to write about a hardship. Otherwise, you know, I don't have any hardships. It's going to look bad. No, we don't need a hardship. I had one student who felt like he needed a hardship, and he wrote about passing a kidney stone. And that was a very uncomfortable personal insight question to read. And, you know, he didn't learn anything from it. He just talked about how uncomfortable it was, and it was uncomfortable for all of us. And it was a missed opportunity. You know, he could have written about something else that would have told me more about him. And, you know, on the other side of the spectrum, it's also not a creative writing project. I don't want any abstract poems, because it doesn't tell me anything about you. I had a student write about how he was the lone wolf howling at the moon. And I did not know what the student was talking about. It just confused me. So, you know, write in your own voice, write about what's important to you, because those are the ones out of the thousands that I've read, the ones where the student is writing about something that's important to them and they're passionate about, those are the ones that stick out, even if, you know, they don't use big words, or if there are grammatical errors, which, by the way, don't count against you. Those are the ones that, you know, make an impact on me when I'm reading applications.
One of the things that we did is we had every student write the COVID essay, just to authentically see what they would want to put in that essay and include anything. And then for some of those kids, we said, yes, you definitely need to include it because you have been uniquely adversely affected. But for so many kids, it was my school shut down, my tests have been canceled 75 times, all these different things. I'm like, okay, but you realize that this is everybody in the world that got affected like that, and colleges are hyper aware. And to Judy's point, they are reading hundreds of thousands of applications and essays. You want everything they read should be really meaningful. And the other thing I want to say about essays for kids that are just starting out and for parents that are there, what a parent would want their kid to write about in a college essay is very different than what a kid should probably be writing about in their college essay. And so, you know, parents will often say, you need to talk about all these technical things that you've done and put your resume on paper and list all of your accomplishments. And that's not really what the essays are about. Essays are really to show how you think about the experiences that you've had, how your behavior may have changed based on an experience, and really to show your skills that you have learned, developed. And again, it shows a sense of who you will be on a college campus. And so, you know, parents, as you're helping your kids, if you are helping your kids with the essays, this is not a personal statement for graduate school. This is not about why do you want to be in this one specific degree and what are you going to do with your life. I mean, it may include elements of that, but it doesn't have to be totally focused on that. This is really about showing your child's personality and how they are different from other students. So really helping them brainstorm different experiences and ideas is incredibly important. And to the trauma piece, if there have been significant traumas, we usually recommend that goes in additional information and not as the main essay, because that trauma probably doesn't define the kid's life completely, and we don't want it to define their life, but rather using the personal statement to talk about really positive things that they have learned, and then using additional information to address an adversity that they may have gone through, but that adversity should only give context for their high school experience. So it's not just, I had this bad experience, please let me into college. It's, listen, this is what I was dealing with. And there are kids that are out there that have gone through very, very severe things And when you mention something that might have been minor and try to make it really outlandish, it also shows a lack of perspective. And I think that's really important to consider. I mean, you know, for example, I had a kid who actually had cancer in his sophomore year and was out of school for 6 months doing chemotherapy. So we talked about the 1B he got because you really want to talk about it. I'm like, why is it important? He's like, oh, that's when I was doing chemo. I'm like, okay, that is relevant for you to talk about, you know, but for any other kid, it's like, well, I had this really bad teacher. I'm like, that's not relevant. And you're making such a big deal, showing a really bad side of you. So really being rational in this process is important. So that's where you would go and talk to your high school guidance counselor or an English teacher or a school principal that you might know really well, to get some advice and say, is this a good essay to present to a college?
No, I think that one of the things that a lot of people have, whether they be a student or an employee, you know, a new employee, is they don't actually have a good sense of self-introspection and be able to see themselves. So these are the things that I think you're pointing out. Is I think it's very important is have someone, you know, just have a conversation with something. We had a saying, you know, at HP. We would make fun of ourselves and said that our marketing department, I hope no one's here from HP marketing, but we used to say that we would sell sushi as cold dead fish, you know, which is the most unappetizing way to do it. But, you know, I think that's a problem that a lot of people have. Is they don't know how to sell themselves. They don't actually know what's interesting about it. They're kind of like blindly following along. And, you know, it could be talking to a counselor at school or everybody can call Daric. But also it could be, you know, just talking with an uncle or an aunt, just talk it through, explain who you are and let them, what turns them on.
Henry, I wanted to just follow up on all these essay questions. So one is the space on the application is really precious. So definitely one thing to consider is just that is your opportunity to speak directly to admissions readers. And the other point I wanted to kind of follow up on is that the first rule of writing is write what you know. And then sometimes students, they're trying to write like adults. And I always tell them, you know, admissions people are extremely accustomed to reading things that teenagers have written. So they actually know you very well. They know your high school. They know you to a T more like, you know, maybe more than Facebook or something. They're actually very aware what your reality is. And if you can speak to that and just show who you are, I think that's important. But I wanted to ask Maura and Judy about that, kind of that lens of how you look at teenagers in a way that they just might not, like they might not know, or parents might not know, that you guys you're professionals when it comes to assessing how teenagers live and what their realities are in a way that, you know, civilians might not understand. Does that question make sense?
Totally. Okay. Judy, do you want to go ahead first and then I can hop on?
Sure. Yes, to everything that you said, Meilin. Yeah, when the student tries to write in a voice that is not their own, it's very obvious. Because I've read so many of these, I can't explain it, but you can just feel when it's not their words and it doesn't make as much of an impact on us. And the personal insight questions is their opportunity to kind of talk to us and let us get to know them. Because we don't do personal interviews, that the personal insight questions kind of take that place. So we get basic information about, you know, the school that they go to, what kind of courses, how many honors courses and stuff are provided there. So we get some context from the student that's applying to us. What we're trying to figure out from the personal insight questions is, how does the student think? Like, what's their perspective on their experience at this school and, you know, in their daily lives? It's getting to know the student and wanting to know how they deal with everyday things. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And I don't want to stress out parents or students, because I don't want you to have to think that way and be like, how do I, you know, write an essay that makes my student kind of show how their thinking skills and their critical, you know, problem solving. No, have your student practice writing honest, personal things, maybe journaling or something. And that's the best practice, I think, for writing personal insight questions.
I'll just quickly say, I don't want to take up too much time. I agree. I think it's much more about your student's voice, authentic voice. It is not the same as when you get into your AP Lit class and you need to write a thesis and you need to write all these things. It's much more casual and colloquial than that. We really want to get to know you. Now, that being said, don't put LOL or LMAO in your essay. I know none of you would. And to be honest, I would probably laugh if I saw that. But I would say focus, you know, on yourself and selling yourself in an authentic light. And that's what's going to be really important.
Hey, I saw a question in the Q&A on community colleges. Now, this is an interesting thing, because one of the things we've seen is sometimes the parents or the students themselves say, you know, we really don't know what we're going to do, or we don't really feel ready for it, or the parent might say, I don't know that Henry's mature enough for it right now. Well, what are you all thinking about community colleges, especially over the next couple of years?
I think it's a great route. A lot of students feel like it's a lesser route, but I don't see it that way at all. It depends on the student family, their situation, where they are at in their lives, what they're comfortable with. And to be honest, there's a lot of pros about community college too, especially if you don't know what you want to do yet. It gives you the opportunity to explore, to get your general education requirements done. It saves money. And then once you transfer to a four-year university, transfer students do so much better statistically than students that spend all 4 years at the university, because they know what they need and they have 2 years to do it, and they get their stuff together. So, you know, there's a lot of pros and cons for both pathways. It just depends personally on you know, the student and their families.
Maura, what do you all see on that?
I agree. I think that community college is an incredible path for students. And I know I'm from the local Bay Area. I went to high school here, and I know that there was kind of an unfair stigma towards it. And I really think it's unnecessary. It is so cheap, especially in California. The California Promise is incredible. My only thing to think about when you're thinking about, okay, if you're going to transfer after the first 2 years at a community college, private universities, and Santa Clara is actually working on this, but oftentimes private universities won't end up being as economically reasonable as if you applied as a first year. We just don't have as much merit-based aid for transfer students. So that is really the only thing that I encourage families to think about. But if we're being completely honest, the UCs are an incredible place for transfer students. They are really set up with incredible transfer offices. And that's something that I think private institutions are starting to really get a hang of and capitalize on. But I'm an open book, and I'll be completely honest. Transferring to Santa Clara is a little bit more challenging than if you were going to transfer into a public institution. I am happy to talk to you about that process. I think it is an awesome process, and I agree. I think especially in this COVID environment, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but like this might be the way to go right now, right? If you're still kind of, I know that's like literally the opposite of the job, but it really might be the way to go right now if that's what's best for you and your family. So I agree. I think it's a really awesome path, and I think it really just depends person to person, and I recommend you reach out to admissions counselors as well as your high school counselors to talk about those paths.
I think the stigma around transferring is actually starting to disappear because of COVID, partly because so many current college students came home and are attending the local community college because they didn't want to go back to their four-year university. They didn't want to pay for online courses, so they're taking classes at the local community college. And I think there's just the broadening of that is going to be great in terms of, it's going to make it harder to transfer long term, but I think the stigma will disappear for kids. But I wanted to, I know we're running out of time, so I wanted to ask a quick question of the admissions officers. This is something I hear about here so often, and I'd love to get your perspective. For second semester junior year, so this is really for our seniors, for most schools, they went credit, no credit, rather than showing grades, and just wanting to get your sense of how you evaluate that, especially for kids who maybe were relying on their had been doing really well, relying on it to show a boost in their grades, and didn't get that opportunity, and having that one less semester to show their academic abilities.
Okay, I can start on that. I have had that question, and I don't know if there's an answer that makes everybody happy, but unfortunately, if there are no grades, we can't use it to calculate the GPA. But, you know, as I've said before, GPA is only one of 14 different criteria that we look at. And there are extra comment sections in the application itself. There's 2 different sections, which the student can say, I did really well during this term. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't have grades to show for it, but, you know, I did well. And they can say that, especially if they're proud of their performance. And we're still looking at the type of classes they're taking, the quality of the courses that they choose. So if they chose, you know, all TA classes and, you know, water polo and an English class, and they got all credits, okay. But if there was a student that took all AP courses or all academic courses and they got all credit, that one is obviously going to weigh a little bit more than the other one.
I think we're looking at it pretty much the same way. I honestly am not I don't know quite yet. We're still working through exactly how we're going to work on evaluating applications in this holistic light post-COVID. But from my understanding, it's kind of the same thing. Unfortunately, they're not grades, right? But we're still going to see the rigor of those courses you've taken. And also, I think while there are definitely some students who really thrived the second semester of their junior year, I think it'll also be a really good option for students who maybe were really struggling with the transition to online learning, right? So we don't want to put anyone at an advantage or a disadvantage because of that. So we'll look more in depthly. I would say check in with me in a couple of weeks, and I'll have definitely a more solidified answer. But as of right now, we're going to be looking at the rigor. And if you really, really wanted those second semester junior year grades and they really were going to make a difference, I would maybe recommend applying regular decision as opposed to early action so that we can see those first semester grades. But again, we are aware of what's going on. We're familiar with your high school curriculums, and we also know that your high school counselors are only a phone call away if we have any specific questions about your specific application.
I've got a last question because we should probably wrap up soon. I know that both of these universities are impacted schools. You guys turn away more people than you can let in. And there are a lot of other schools that are impacted as well. So the question is like, should people actually stretch? Is this the time when they should say, like, I really wanted to go to Santa Cruz, or I really want to go to Santa Clara? I might not have been able to make it in before, but should I actually make a stretch and try this year?
I think that they should always try if there's a desire to go, because there's no like one single type of student that we admit. We admit students from all different backgrounds, all different academic backgrounds. And if you don't apply, you never know if you could have got in. So if there's a desire, I think that they should always try.
Good.
I agree. And I would say kind of on the flip side of that, don't just add colleges to your list because you think you'll get in if you don't want to go there, right? I think I was definitely I did that when I was a senior. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to get into these schools, so I'll add them. But I had no intention of going there. So not only was that a waste of, now I'm realizing, the admission counselor's time, but my time, my parents' funding. So I would say, you know, yes, if you are passionate about a school and it may be a little bit above your reach, still apply. That passion is going to come through in the application, but don't apply somewhere just because you think that you have to get in, right? Really pick schools that you can actually see yourself thriving at for the next 4 years.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Purvi.
I was just going to say, we tell our kids to do the hard work now of doing the college research, so it's much easier when they get their offers. And I think try, but within reason. So I don't think this is a year where you say, okay, should I apply to every Ivy League school and Caltech and Stanford and MIT because it's COVID? Again, you should still be really thoughtful, and the process is still the process. And everything that they would have looked at, grades, activities, all of that, it's still very relevant. So again, it has to be within reason, because I think it can set up for a lot of disappointment down the road. So having a few of those, what we call the dream schools, absolutely do that. But again, do the hard work now of the college research. It'll make it easier and more fun, the process of choosing down the road.
Good.
I want to piggyback on what Purvi is saying. So I actually, I think the college list, developing the college list, is probably the most underrated thing and least understood. It's actually the most valuable. And I think that one thing that families and students have to consider is that colleges are looking back at you. Like, you're looking at them, but they're looking at you too. And they also want to know, are we actually going to be good together? So when you choose a school, you also want to think about it from the admissions perspective. Do they think you're serious? Like, are you acting like you're serious, right? Because if you want both, right? The applicant and the college, you want to both be happy with the choice. So I think considering it like a dialogue and choosing those schools carefully is important. And you always want to respect the admissions officer's time. I'm not just saying that because Judy and Maura are here, but I think that's probably something that, right? When you evaluate, that's something paramount in your mind. So I just wanted to share that.
You know, it's funny you should mention things that way, Meilin, because as an employer, that's how we looked at candidates. You know, after they go through college or grad school, then they're going to come out to us, and we got to look, are you serious? Do you have your act together? Do you know what to do? You know, all of those things, the very same things. Good to practice it early.
Yeah.
You know? Hey, I would like to go ahead and do a wrap up. And so I'm going to go in order and ask everybody on the panel for kind of a final thought or recommendation. And I'm going to start with Principal Daric.
All right. So I guess my final thought to parents would be is to take your time. And as I talk to you, I'm actually talking to myself. Take your time, because I have about 8 years to go before I retire. And why rush to work for the rest of your life, right? So, I mean, you don't, and not only am I talking from a parent perspective, but also as a educator. It's not like you have to rush direct into college right after high school. I know that sounds good to everyone on the panel, but it has to be the right timing, because some students go to college and their first year, it's just a wreck, right? Because they were not ready for it, right? That's why the community colleges are so great to prepare you. So parents, take your time. I know we all get excited and we want our kids to do great things and go way further than we did, but they have their whole life to decide what they want to do, and they may make changes 3-4 times over the next 5-6 years. So it's no rush. It's going to be fine. Everything is going to work out. So let's just take a deep breath and just enjoy the ride.
Very good. Rosalyn.
So I am going to put my librarian hat on and say, you know, this time is a gift. So use it. You know, the counselors were saying, we want to know how your kids think. Do you know how your kids think? This is a great time for everybody to read the same book and talk about it. I know, books. I can't help it. But if your kids don't like to read, pick a book that's been made into a movie. Have them watch the movie and you read the book and talk about it. Have fun with it. Play board games. Play video games together. Andrew keeps trying to teach me to play Planet Side, and I'm terrible at it. But it gives him confidence to try to teach me. Have your kid teach you to do something. Please, whatever you do, do not think, this is a great time for my child to read the classics. No. I mean, unless they want to, great, we have lots of those. But do not approach this as some kind of terrible slog through the great literature. Find something that's going to spark interest in both you and your kids and enjoy it.
By the way, speaking as a parent of older children, your kids, you know, a lot of times ignoring you right now because they're teenagers and they know everything. Don't worry. Usually when they turn about 24, all of a sudden they discover you got smarter and are more human again. So, you know, it's a tough time. Okay, Purvi. You're muted, Purvi.
Sorry, just saying, Rosalind, you're speaking my language. We have 3 boys at home, 10, 5, and 2. But we started a book club with my 10-year-old and 10 of his got a boyfriend, like friends that are boys. And let me tell you, it's been an adventure to go through and read books with them. And it's been amazing, the insights that they have. But my piece of advice for families is that this is a really great opportunity to reset and really reset expectations and what is it that you want for your children. One of the things I ask my parents to do in our parent clinic when we're starting senior year is to think about your child when he or she was 3 and what did you want for him or her at that point. You probably wanted him to be really happy and curious and have a love of learning, and all of these things that you wanted should still be the same things that you want for your children now that they're actually at this stage of being on their own. So going back and cultivating that in them and then within the family, and really just having conversations, right? I think there's a lot of pressure in the parental community of, you know, where's your kid going to college? What grade did they get? What were their SAT scores? But really try to step back and focus on what's most important for your child. Your kids are going to be fine. Like wherever they go, they're going to be amazing as long as they can have confidence in themselves and know that they have your confidence as well. So I think, again, just reset back to what you wanted as a family when you had children, when they were little. Those are, again, the things that you want for them throughout their lives. So just take the time to do so. It's hard. Everyone's stressed right now, but try.
Meilin?
So I would say that in any time, it's always best to make your plans calmly, like calmly assess what you want to do, and then calmly execute to the best of your ability. Despite everything, it's actually more important that you carefully do that. You carefully and very calmly decide what is really best for you. And it's very important that you do it with a very objective and calm lens. And that, you know how they say, like right in California, we always have earthquakes, like stop, drop, and roll. Like in times of emergency, do these things, right? So it's actually really important to have really strong default procedures. I know that sounds super boring, but the alternative is panicking and being unhappy and stressed out. But in reality, it's more important to remember you are empowered, right, to make choices in your life. Always. You can always make good decisions. You can always make decent, reasonable plans. So if I could just share one thought, that's what it would be. Just remember, you always have the power to decide and calmly make plans and calmly carry them out. And that will probably be a really good way for you to produce your best work in this application season. And if you're in high school and younger grades, same message applies. If you want to make the most of your high school time, look at what you have going around you and how you want to proceed. That way you don't feel like Of course, everyone's panicking, but if you can focus and make a plan and carry it out, that's actually going to be a really good friend for you right now.
Very good. Okay, Maura.
Thank you. So I'll speak a little bit to the students in the room. I think we've been getting some really good advice for parents. My biggest piece of advice would be really, I know for juniors especially, but seniors too, you know, my biggest piece of advice for the juniors is start your application before school starts, okay? In the summer before your senior year, if you can, at least getting the answers out. Because I'm sure you can talk to the seniors now who've maybe waited a little bit until school started. It's really, really exhausting and it takes a lot of time, especially in this virtual space. So my big advice for the seniors is try to set time outside of the school week, and I know you don't want to work on your college applications so that you're a little bit more refreshed and your creative juices are flowing. And just in general, I really encourage everyone on the call to make sure that they're taking time away from Zoom, away from the computer, and really focus on those other things that we talked about today, right? Gardening, you know, reading, and doing other things where you can truly just let this sit, because I have noticed in students and in myself how much extra stress this Zoom environment can bring into your daily life. So for students, I know you're taking online classes. I know you're absolutely rocking it, but make sure to, on the weekends, after class, take a break and go water some plants outside or something. So that would be my biggest piece of advice outside of everything I've said today. But so great to talk with you all today.
Thank you, Maura. Judy.
Wow, everybody's got such great advice, and you know, I want to agree with everyone. I guess the only thing that I can add on to, and I know it's so much easier to say this than to actually do it, but try not to stress so much about the future. You know, there are different paths. There are a number of different paths towards your goal. There's not only just one way to get to college or one way to get a good job. So, you know, take some of the pressure off of yourself, students, when you're trying to figure out how to create the perfect application, because there isn't one. The best application is the most honest and general or genuine application. And, you know, parents, everything's going to be okay. Just support your kids and let them know that you have their back, and that will do so much more for them and their future than you even know. And that's all I got.
Well, thank you. Well, let me try to get the final word in. You know, I'm the retiree in the group here. I'm the guy with the old guy, right? Several of my colleagues, you know, are envious because they never actually spent the time when they were younger to develop a hobby of something. I'm a woodworker, so I do that. And whether it be gardening or something like this, it is actually a good time to do it, because if you think things are rushed now, just wait till, you know, the student, are raising students of your own, and you'll be doing a job, and there'll be something else beside COVID-19 then. But, you know, the pressures will keep going up, and then all of a sudden you get to be an old guy like me, and you know it. So take the time. And this is also the time to really get to know, going back to what y'all said, it's a good time to really get to know your family. And, you know, spend the time, talk about things. You just never know where it's going to go. Take walks. With that, I want to thank our panelists very, very much. I think we had an excellent thing. This meeting is being recorded, and the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce will have it posted shortly. Thank you very much.